we have discussed values and ethics in organizations, and in continuation to that we are discussing another aspect of corporate ethics, which is known as corporate social responsibility. Every corporation has to survive, and it has to survive and sustain itself with the ethical values that it may practice. So, we are going to talk about this concept in today's lecture, and we begin with the sustainable performance of a company, and which is the issue of CSR. So, sustainability is about building a society in which a proper balance is created between economic, social and ecological aims. For businesses, this involves sustaining and expanding economic growth, shareholder value, prestige, corporate reputation, customer relationships, and the quality of product and services. So now we are going to discuss that within an organization what happens, but the ethics also have to look into the whole environment within which the organization is actually operating. It also means that adopting and pursuing ethical business practices, creating sustainable jobs, building values for all the company's stakeholders, and attending the need of the undeserved. We are looking at all these factors. A company that embarks on the path of sustainability needs to carefully examine the mission, vision and values, which we have discussed in our last lecture. And as we have discussed that most of the companies these days have a mission statement, values, and they have vision about their company. So, it must be informed about the legal constraints, and they assess all the management structures. Is it clear? We are talking about the corporate social responsibility, which is looking at your corporation within the organization where it operates with, and the ethical values that the organization practices. A company, the principle of sustainability helps businesses to reduce unnecessary risk, avoid waste generation, increase material and energy efficiency, innovate new environmentally friendly products and services, and obtain operating permits from local communities. So, we are trying to understand the organization within a total larger social system, and how even the communities are involved in the overall operation of the organization and the organization's ethical responsibilities. Academics and practitioners have been striving to establish an agreement upon the definition of the concept of CSIR since more than 30 years ago. In 1960, Keith Davis suggested that social responsibility refers to businesses, decisions and actions taken for reasons at least partially beyond the firm's direct economic and technical interests. Then Els and Walton, they argue that CSR refers to the ethical principles that ought to govern the relationship of the corporation and society. So, do you see that we are talking about organizations, how they relate to communities and societies around the overall environment around them. So, the outer circle that we are trying to talk about outline newly emerging and still amorphous responsibilities that business should actually assume to become more actively involved in improving the social environment. When we say outer circle, I am imagining that you have an organization, okay, and then you have an outer circle, and that is the environment I am talking about, and the corporate social responsibility has got to do something there, okay. Within, of course, the parameters of organizational functioning, you have to talk about that. So, in 1971, the Committee for Economic Development used three concentric circles approach. In fact, the circles that I am trying to discuss a very simplistic fashion. So, they try to talk about that, and this approach is depicting CSIR, CSRR. The inner circle include basic economic functions, growth, products and jobs, and the intermediate circle suggests that the economic functions must exercise within an organization with sensitivity and awareness of changing social values and the priorities. So, CSR is defined. There are number of perspectives and number of we can say the definitions given from various perspectives by various practitioners and academicians. So, we are just looking at that in order to understand what exactly CSR actually all about. So, CSR is also defined as making good business sense. Corporate social responsibility is the continuing commitment of business to behave ethically and contribute to economic development while improving the quality of life of the workforce and their families, as well as of the local community and society at large. So, you can see here we are involving also not only the workforce, also we are extending the responsibility to the families as well as the communities and societies. Another definition, well, I have a couple of definitions for you, because I thought once I am giving you a lecture on this, I am teaching. So, you should understand that how various authors have dealt with the concept of corporate social responsibility. So, I have many definitions, and if you actually combine all this and you find the actually the gist of corporate social responsibility. That is why I am giving you number of definitions. Another definition of CSR is about capacity building, okay, for sustainable livelihoods of people, okay, in organization and also perhaps even beyond the organization we are talking about. And so, it respects the cultural differences and finds business opportunities in building the skills of employees, the community and the government. CSIR thus is about business giving back to society. See, when we are doing business, we are not hanging in isolation. We are working within a society, we take input from the society, and then we have to give some return to the society, okay. So, we give back. Corporate social responsibility is about that. In every definition that we are discussing, you will find new and fresh insight is emerging. So, corporate social responsibility is also defined as the alignment of business operations with social values. It takes into consideration the interests of the stakeholders of business, policies, policy making and the action. So, the focus of CSR is on social, environmental and financial success of a company, and this aims to achieve the social development within achieving the business success. So, are you getting this point, that when we are doing or when we are practicing corporate social responsibility, we are not doing that at the cost of our business. Our business success is there, but we are trying to extend that also to the social system, so that much greater perhaps returns are available to us in the tangible as well as in the non-tangible sense, and the organization could be sustainable. Can you see the link now between sustainability, corporate social responsibility, and also trying to look into the long term business that we are trying to achieve. So, here we have presented a model of corporate social responsibility, what it means. And in fact, this summarizes the discussion so far, what we have discussed, and you can see that corporate social responsibility, once this has this moves through the values and the other systems, finally it looks at the organizational effectiveness, which we are looking for, the long term sustainability and effectiveness of a system. We have defined this earlier. If you would recollect that in one of the earlier lectures, we were trying to define both corporate social responsibility as well as organizational effectiveness. So, should I move from here? Have you understood the model? Is it clear? Okay. If there are no questions, I will move. So, corporate social responsibility is about how companies manage the business processes to produce an overall positive impact on society. So, according to Malin Baker, CSR can be explained by the following illustration. Okay, the illustration perhaps will appear later. I have not put it here because a number of definitions I would like to put here. So, according to Wikipedia, encyclopedia, corporate social responsibility is an expression used to describe what some suggest as companies' obligation to be sensitive to the needs of all the stakeholders of the business operations. Okay, this is one of the encyclopedia as has been suggesting. These include, but not limited to, employees, customers, suppliers, community organizations, subsidiaries and affiliates, joint venture partners, local neighborhood, investors and shareholders, or a sole owner, whatever be the case in this situation. So, all these are the participants in a system, and the corporate social responsibility includes all these participants of the total system. Often you must be thinking that in a system only manager and the employees or the workforce. Well, they are the main we can say the people, the role players, but no organization can survive unless all these participants have been looked into. And so the issue becomes much more important, perhaps than ever before, and what we perhaps never understood, and that's why never cared for. So we have to now look into the larger perspective of an organization. So this principle is closely linked with the imperative of ensuring that these operations are sustainable, as I said just now, and that it is recognized that it is necessary to take account not only of the financial or economic dimensions in the decision making, but also the social, environmental consequences for sustainable development. In fact, we began our discussion with this, and I have already explained to you about the tangible and intangible benefits that an organization perhaps can give to society and earn for themselves. So this is what we are trying to discuss here. Therefore, you can see here that the corporate social responsibility this leads to the quality of life and social development. Here we are trying to put that the model where we are trying to say that corporate social responsibility will lead to quality of life to all the participants which we have listed earlier, and so it is going to lead to social development. Social development, development of society, community, well, country and nation at large. And that is why corporate social responsibility, well, we have no choice perhaps not to pay attention to corporate social responsibility. United States, in United States some professors, some agencies have defined corporate social responsibility more in terms of philanthropic model. Then they donate a certain share of profit for the charitable causes. See, while we are practicing corporate social responsibility, one way of doing it is also to give donations and give sort of any kind of a share for social development. So in the United States, this has been corporate social responsibility has been more or less practiced in this way. So every corporation perhaps will give some donation. Also in India, if you see many of the corporations, you will find that the organizations sometimes run schools, sometimes they are giving to NGOs, and sometimes they are themselves running an NGO. So also in India we find this kind of a model becoming very, very popular in terms of practice of corporate social responsibility. The European model is much more focused on operating the core business in a community for solid business case reasons, because of some of these reasons. So social and some of these are that social responsibility becomes an integral part of the wealth creation process. Much of it is managed property, should enhance the competitiveness of the business and maximize the value of wealth creation to society. This also aims to get at the incentive to practices of corporate social responsibility. More and better, it is a philanthropic exercise. Some of the corporate social responsibility areas are human rights, business ethics, environmental policies, corporate contributions, community development, corporate governance, and workplace issues. Can you see that how corporate social responsibility, the scope of the activities are very many. Okay. Should I repeat these? The human rights, business ethics, environmental policies. You can see each one of these, as an important component, an important, perhaps a duty as a manager. Corporate contributions, community development, corporate governance, and workplace issues. Not that this is the exhaustive list. You could extend that with your experience and perhaps your enthusiasm. Social and environmental performance are coordinated and considered side by side with financial performance. From social and socio-economic development, concerns for international human rights policies, companies are being held accountable for their actions and impact. Yeah, we are talking about corporate social responsibility, and you can see the impact that has made on the companies. Companies are also more transparent in disclosing the communicating and communicating their policies and practices, so as the impact on employees, communities, and the environment could be seen very clearly. In the new global economy, we are all gearing up to develop our corporations as the global corporations, and we are all actually gearing up to actually survive in the competitive market of globalization, the global economy. So, in the global economy, companies, those are responsive to the demands of their stakeholders and better positioned to achieve long-term financial success. Those companies perhaps will benefit from CSR too. So, some of these I am presenting to explain to you. Enhanced brand image and reputation. See, every company has to have enhanced brand image and reputation. Improved financial performance. See, some of the benefits that you may get if you are practicing the issues related to CSR. Increased sales and customer loyalty. Reduced cost. Customer satisfaction. Increased ability to attract and retain employees. Employees would like to join that company where they find that company is very ethical and it actually practices corporate social responsibility, and and it may be paying reasonable, yet the image is such that people may like to come and join and will continue. So, possibility of attrition rate may also be perhaps managed. Increased market share. When you have the market share in the for example, the shares, the price of the share of a company might also increase as a result of the fact that the company is practicing CSR. Perhaps you have never thought about it, but if you are doing that and if you have a company, then the shares of your company are likely to increase. Then reduced regulatory oversights. See, we have to also send some returns, and we should have some regulation, perhaps the duties to actually fulfill certain regulations. And if we have a very well managed corporate social responsibility motivation, then the possibility of oversight is not there. We are doing what we are expected to do, and we will be in a better position to achieve success. Then also brand visibility and recognition and awareness, this also is possible if you are practicing CSR. Then obviously if you are practicing this strategy, we can say you could be very well sort of positioned in the competitive market. And then environmental sustainability, because if we are doing a business, we also have to see that we are not creating bad environment. At the same time, we are also trying to sustain the environment around. So, that possibility also is much higher. Okay. Then the forging of partnerships. We can have partnerships if the other company knows that okay, we are very ethical in practicing the responsibilities, social responsibilities, then the possibility is immense. And so, the benefits of social responsibilities to businesses may vary depending on the nature of the enterprise and are typically very difficult to quantify. Okay. When I say intangible, I mean that. It should be noted that definition of CSR used within the business can vary from that of very strict stakeholder impact definition to many others, and will often include the charitable efforts and volunteering, and we may also have the other on the other side of it. We can talk about certain social issues. This brings us to understand that what are the variables of corporate social responsibility as a concept. Here I would like to discuss a pyramid of corporate social responsibility given by some authors in literature, which we have discussed, and then we have developed something very close to that. So, for corporate social responsibility to be accepted by the scientists in this field and the business persons, it should be framed in such a way that the range of business responsibilities are embraced. So, 4 kinds of social responsibilities one could see, which constitute the CSR. These are the economic factors, legal factors, ethical factors, and of course, the philanthropic factors, right. So, these factors I am wanting to explain to you now. These are the 4 factors I have tried to put here in this particular model. Okay. You can see the physical, economic, then okay, then the legal, environmental, all these factors we have tried to put here. Okay. and these factors, the philanthropic factors are put here as in this caption I am trying to show you that these are some of the philanthropic factors. The ethical factors here I am trying to show you that these are the ethical factors. Then legal factors, you can see these are the legal factors. Is it? Yeah. And then you can see the economic factors. Okay. So these sets of factors become important. Should I go back to these factors? Let me just go back to these factors once again. Okay. Here what we are saying that the corporate social responsibility is a group, this is a composite or a composes of a group of factors, okay, which are economic, legal, ethical and philanthropic. Is it clear? Okay. And then we find that these are the physical, economic, legal and philanthropic factors. Okay. And here the philanthropic responsibilities are, okay, the contribution of the resources towards the community and the impact, on the quality of life. Then we move on to the ethical factors. I am repeating this, yeah. Then the economic factors, and then you have the philanthropic factors. So we can say that these, when we add these factors, this results into corporate social responsibility. So if you want to conduct a study, perhaps you can get the information on all these 4 sets of variables and combine this will result into CSR. So the environmental issues for CSR are likely to rest on one or more of the arguments, which are about the human resources, about the risk management, about the brand differentiation, about the license to operate, about diverting attention. Okay. So when we are looking at some of the issues of corporate social responsibility, some of the arguments relate to these issues. So corporate social responsibility can be important aid to recruitment and retention of people, particularly within the competitive market that we have, within the environment that we have. Okay. Short while ago we were talking about the lowering the attrition rate, retaining people, and then the quality of life, keeping people happily in your organization. So there are many views regarding CSR. We have talked about number of definitions, but then there are also number of views regarding CSR, which will look into some of these views. Some commentators are cynical about the corporation's commitment to CSR. See, if you look at a very traditional manager, you will find that he or she might believe that an industry is only supposed to generate profit, and only you have to give little bit for the survival and growth of, say, the employees within your organization, and nothing to the community and society at large. A traditional manager perhaps believes this way. Am I right or wrong? Perhaps if you interview some of the traditional managers, you will find their perception which is like this. But today, as the body of knowledge goes, and as the globalization is there, and the whole subject of management studies has become a very professionalized and matured, we find that CSR has become an important factor for success of an organization and society. So, even though some of the persons, they might make these observations, and they might say that the commitment to CSR and sustainable development, these are the ideas of only an ethical company, and it's not a practical and sustainable practice. They might say that. But if you look very deeply, you will find that one has to really change oneself, one has to really change one's perception regarding this. However, there are a number of arguments, and let us see some of these arguments, because whenever we are discussing any concept, we have to look at both positive and negative and neutral aspect of the issue. Only then we can finally understand and arrive at our decision. So, the first argument about this is that businesses are owned by their shareholders, and any money they spend on so called social responsibility is effectively this is generated from those shareholders, and so they have to decide for themselves if they want to give any charity. So, they have to, this is one argument as to why should we have corporate social responsibility, or how much of corporate social responsibility. And this has a reference, Malin Baker, April 2001, he says that there are a number of arguments against these corporate social responsibilities, and these arguments actually we have taken from his writings. And the second argument is the leading companies who report on their social responsibility are the basket cases, and the most effective business leaders do not waste time with this stuff. In fact, before I began with these arguments, I gave you an idea that perhaps a manager, a very traditional manager, will look into this as something which is not needed for business management. And so, that is the second argument which is given here. Another argument is that our company is too busy surviving hard times to do this. We can't afford to take our eyes off the ball and focus on these things, because we have to focus on the core business that we have. Right, that is what I was trying to talk about, the traditional manager. We have to focus on the core business. There is no denying about it. But a business that will survive in the long term will also need your eyes and ears opened in terms of the practice of corporate social responsibility. That is the point. So, there are a number of arguments which go sort of I will not say totally against, but there are arguments looking into the other side of the story. Then the corporations do not really care for people. Okay. Is it all right? Corporations do not care, but they are supposed to care. They are supposed to be ethical, right. So, in spite of all these arguments that we are seeing, that which are giving us some idea that how would a traditional manager believe about his or her role as a as a practicing manager, and in his or her perception corporate social responsibility may not be an important aspect of managing business. Okay. But let us see, we still have hopes, because we can find out, we can identify that there are situations in which we have found that corporate social responsibility pays a lot. In many sense, we have already discussed that earlier, and I will discuss that once again, I will repeat that once again. So, now we will see identifying MNC's motivations to adopt CSR codes. Let us see, let us look into that. Why? Because of values, because of isomorphism and peer partner pressures. Assess the opportunities and challenges for policies. Some of these factors. So, we come to the concept of sustainable development once again. We had started discussing the issue, because that's one of the important factors. The concept of sustainable development has defined the policy options for environmentalists, industrialists, as well as those governments vis-a-vis the exploitation of natural resources and practical economy of production and consumption of goods. Okay. So, this is also to promote long-term environmental strategies for achieving sustainable development. To recommend ways concerns for the environment may be translated into greater cooperation among the developing countries and between the countries of different stages and economic and social development, and lead to achievement of common and mutually supportive objectives, which are taken on account of relationships between people, resources, environment and development. Okay. So, to consider ways and means by which the international community can deal effectively with environmental problems are important. To help define the shared perceptions of long-term environmental issues and the appropriate efforts needed to deal successfully with the problem of protecting and enhancing the environment, a long-term agenda for action during the coming decades and the aspirational goals for the world and world community perhaps is needed, isn't it? So, when you have your company and or when you are managing your company, somewhere in your agenda you have to talk about CSR as an important component, because there are certain goals which are short term, say year wise or quarter wise results in terms of your performance, but also you need to have the long term CSR goals. So, future challenges in India, if we see some of these I am trying to present to you. In the recent times, a number of foundations have been set up by leading Indian firms and which have taken keen interest in corporate activities to in fact we can say corporate activism to improve the healthcare, education, living conditions and reduce poverty. So, corporate social responsibility is about tradition and culture. Firms can institutionalize volunteerism among employees through appropriate incentives and recognitions. See, there are many public sector companies in India. They adopt, sometimes villages, they open schools, they also open, well, giving charity to NGOs that we have already discussed also in our country. But they run schools, they also run, some of those health camps, blood donations. So, these are there in India in most of the companies that we have today, most of the large successful companies we are talking about. I recollect having seen, once I was passing through by a state government bus and looking here and there, and I found somewhere it was written school. There was a school building and it said BHEL school. So, I tried to find out from people that BHEL is not here. So, how come this building says BHEL school? So, they said okay, this is a village school and which is run by BHEL. So, they are doing that. So, that was in a village when I saw that particular building. So, I was just reminded of the CSIR projects that companies take. So I really became very inquisitive at that point of time. So, the corporate social responsibility is about traditions and cultures. Okay, we have already discussed this. So, corporate social responsibility can be much more than charity, an innovative way to contribute socially and also to spend some time with the towns and villages and to buy products from millions of artisans who are at the bottom of the economic paradigm. Corporations need to design production services for the enormous population at the bottom of the pyramid. So, large corporations can exploit hundreds of historical places in rural towns and villages for corporate training, conferences and gateways. Of course, innovative ways are needed to create decent places like hotels, restaurants and many amenities outside major cities. These are some of the possibilities when the corporations are trying to help the communities. So, inculcating corporate social responsibility is also about training young minds and helping future generations organize themselves for good social responsibility needs to deploy ingrained attitude in the children from their childhood. Okay, these possibilities are there. So, social responsibility is about leadership, about respect for fellow human beings and check and balances. It is not uncommon to find high school students volunteering for any kind of a community work. In fact, students sometimes accumulate points from their school grades and then use that for the social scenario, any kind of a social responsibility. So, every country embraces the remarkable concept of individual and business forming a partnership to support social causes. In the context of India, such partnership has become enormous, and in fact that has enormous potential also for strengthening our society. So, CSR in broad summary is the ethical behavior of a company towards society. So, we can, I mean, if we want to come to a one line say definition, we can put it this way, or our understanding. So, impact can manifest themselves as the accusations of social, environmental and injustice factors. Such claims can severely damage corporate reputation and leading a number of unwanted outcomes, which could be many. It can include shareholders, investors. When we say shareholders, we also mean the owners, employees, customers, suppliers, joint venture partners, subsidiaries and affiliates, communities and organizations, and local neighborhood in the whole process. This we have already discussed earlier, and this is closely linked with the principle of sustainable development, which is a process of developing land, cities, business communities, etc., that meets the needs of the present time without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. And therefore, the issues of CSIR, this we look at, there are number of issues. In today's discussion, I am taking up only the issue of environment, because environment is something very current, we can say need, and many companies sometimes they make negative impact on environment, and sometimes environment itself needs care of the company. So, whatever be the case, we need to care for our environment, for ourselves as well as for our future generation. Therefore, I have decided just to take up one example, but there are many other examples which about the human development and HRD and others, which very briefly I have just touched upon, but here I am looking at only environment as one of the major issues. So, today CSR priority focuses on human rights, employee rights, environmental protection, supplier relations and community involvement, and two related issues which are very important are about the right of stakeholders and monitoring and assessing the CSR performance. Another important issue about business perspective is about the intellectual property right, okay, IPR, which is a very crucial issue for any kind of a risk taking investment in the new technologies and products. So, once we are talking about environment, we are talking about the waste management, we are talking about any kind of a depletion of environment because of our efforts. Sometimes we create lot of profits, but then the byproducts go either inside the soil, or perhaps they will make the air not worth breathing, or they will pollute the water or whatever. Okay. So, on the one hand I am doing very good business, making lot of profit. On the other hand, I am finding that I am not responsible for what are the negative consequences of my technology and how the society is getting affected. And that is why environment becomes one of the major issues when we are looking at the corporate social responsibility. And so, what is corporate social responsibility? Well, we have seen many definitions, and we have also looked at many benefits and many other aspects. We can once again as a recap, I am trying to talk to you one or two things again. CSR is about in the interaction of corporation with the legal and social obligation of societies in which it operates and how it accounts for these obligations. Corporate social responsibility is the continuing commitment by business to behave ethically and to contribute in the economic development while improving the quality of workforce and the families as well as the local community and society at large. So, the company's core values are important issues which have emerged strongly from the work group are the human rights about so the CSR is about the ethical behavior of the company towards society, about the employee rights. In particular, it means management's acting responsibility with its and its relationship with the stakeholders who have legitimate interest in the business, not just in the shareholders. And so, CSR delivering business benefits. There are many business benefits which I have said in certain terms in earlier also, but let me just before I close, let me give you certain business benefits that, because you may be thinking that it's only we are talking about responsibility, but why this responsibility? Because it's a good business as well. So, financial versus social performance we find, okay, then supply relations are good, developing strategy, emerging principles, building capacity, cooperating on technology, taking long-term view, developing strategy and emerging principles. I think I am repeating this, building partnerships, showing transparency, then integrating the approach. And so, CSR is supposed to be the win-win situation. And with this win-win situation, we are closing our discussion on CSR. And now you can relate this discussion, today's discussion, to the issue of values and ethics that we have discussed earlier in this course. And so, we are trying to look at the win-win situation using the corporate social responsibility for a good business. So, we close our discussion today here, and we will move on to our next discussion in the next lecture.